Good afternoon, everybody. This is your host, Gabe, and welcome to Casual Coffee Talk, where ideas, insights, stories, and experiences are collected and shared with you. Today's topic focuses on a special and particular job that's set to dispense comfort, compassion, and care even without a prescription. Described by Terry Guime as angels with stethoscopes. Can you guess who they are? There goes a saying, if you save one life, you're a hero. If you save 100 lives, you're probably a nurse. And with me right now, I have a good friend of mine, Christian Suarez, to help answer some questions and share with us his experience in what it's like to be a nurse. So, welcome to the show, Christian.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, that was quite an introduction right there, honestly.
Well, I mean, I like to make it special for each guest I have.
Yeah.
You know, and keeping it relevant and
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, no, it's a really good introduction, and I really don't know how to jump off from that, really.
Oh, all you
a-
had to do is answer questions.
I know, right?
I'll do the work for you. You just have to go and pull the second half.
Don't even worry about it. Don't even.
So Christian, you're a registered nurse, right?
Yeah, I am.
And how long have you been a nurse for?
So I got my license back in 2015, so it's about it's about 3 years coming on when it comes about next year, about 4 in January, which is really nice.
Yeah.
And I've learned so much from being just 3 years on being a nurse for 3 years, and it's just
Nice.
I never thought I'd get this far.
Well, I know as far as just nursing and doctors and stuff. Dumb question, but can you explain to our audience, the main job of a nurse and why is it important?
Wow. Okay. So that's definitely a big one. One of the things with nursing, I think that if you were to look at it from a very basic level,
Yes.
nursing about being able to being able to assess and take care of a patient, essentially be the eyes and ears of a doctor,
Oh, okay.
and be able to identify and think through for a patient. If there's any conditions, any problems, anything like that,
Yeah.
that is what the core aspect of nursing is, and focusing on the patient, identify what oftentimes a lot of people, they don't know, or not, they don't know, have the medical knowledge,
Yeah.
and really be able to identify if there's a problem or if there's an issue, and be able to help them get through it, and be able to
Okay.
help find the resources that they need for it.
Got it. So if a doctor's not around, the nurse is pretty much there to help diagnose, care for the patient, and really just help expedite any processes that are involved with trying to help that person get better, right?
Yeah, and so I wouldn't really say diagnosis because there's a lot of legal formality
Oh,
behind
yeah,
it.
of course.
Yeah, there's a lot of legal formality behind that, but essentially what we need to be able to do is be able to look at a person and say, oh, I can see there's something wrong. We look at the numbers, we say oh, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
And essentially be able to help the needs of the patient.
Yeah.
With the doctors, they're very focused on the disease. They're focused on, making sure the disease is cured or controlled or whatever it is. While we as nurses, we not only focus on that, but also be able to take care of other needs outside of the special tab, heart, lungs, or things like that. So think about, psychosocial issues. You think about hey, are they depressed? Are they living in a good situation? Are they in, a terrible situation? Are they set up to be able to take care of themselves? So it's for nursing, that what I described earlier was just a very broad concept of it.
Yeah.
And it can be applied in a lot of different ways and very flexible in how that goes.
Got it. But you guys are always keeping track of that biofeedback and everything.
Exactly, yeah. We're constantly checking the biofeedback, and for me, working nights, it's oh, why am I checking you? It was why am you checking me at 3 a.m? It's well, I just want to make sure you're still breathing, make sure everything's still breathing, and nothing's bleeding out.
Beating and bleeding, wow. No, that definitely makes sense. My goodness. I like the alliteration there. Just a side note. So, how did you actually get started in nursing, and what about it interested you? What was your story behind it?
So for me, it's more of a legacy thing. It runs in the family. So I grew up in I grew up in the field. It's like I have a cousin who's a doctor. I have both my parents are nurses.
Yeah.
I have another cousin who's a CNA, one dialysis tech.
Wow.
A person who's pharmacy. You know, anybody in the aspect of the medical field was it is involved in some way in my family. And so anytime I wanted to ask, there was an uncle I could talk to or an auntie I could talk to.
Hey, that's helpful.
So really, that's going into it. I did go through like rebellious years in high school of like, oh, you know, being so comfortable with medical. It's like, you know what, let me break out and try something different, business, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And it didn't really stick with me. And so a lot of people said, oh, I have a natural knack to work medical field.
Yeah.
And so not really knowing where to start, I chose nursing because at least from there I can jump off into various avenues. And so with nursing, it is like you can go into a lot of different routes with it. Very flexible in terms of jobs, whether it be working directly at the bedside, or doing case management where you focus on individual patients, larger scope projects, or you can work for the government. You can do public health projects, or you know, it's a variety of different jobs that you can go in. And for me, it's like at least I have the opportunity to spread out while I try to figure out which area I want to end up in.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So it's kind of like nursing is almost like a springboard to other things.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of people think that like nursing, that's it. And, you know, you stay at the bedside and that's where you belong. It's like, no, you can end up in, like, you could end up working for the government. You can end up working on policies. You can end up becoming a nurse practitioner or a researcher or, you know, this or that. There's a lot of various avenues you could end up with just starting off as a bedside nurse.
Got it. Very neat. I'm not sure if this is a dumb question or not, but can a nurse actually become a doctor?
Yes, completely, yeah. So I've known a lot of nurses who tried to go up to being a doctor.
Yeah.
It does take a little bit longer, but for a lot of nurses, they tend to go to a nurse practitioner because usually it's like less education time. Like you don't have to spend like a full 8 years on top of everything you've done.
Got it, yeah.
But for a nurse practitioner, you can still do the 4 years and then move on to the next, and then, you know, eventually be close to a doctor, kind of have similar privileges with, you know, minor nuances here and there, but for the most part still kind of participate in that level of care.
Okay, very cool. So it would be beneficial to have that medical knowledge though too, right?
Yeah. So with nursing, when you have that medical knowledge and then you want to jump into becoming like a physician or a physician assistant, you are able to go beyond that, beyond the basics of what you've learned as far as the physiology of it. Because for a lot of people, when they take the anatomy or the physiology, that's like the basics for a lot of medical field. It's like you understand that, and then now it's like this is your normal, and then now when you go into much more detail as a nurse, okay, here's the abnormal that you should be looking out for. This is what can happen and what you should be looking out. And for doctors, they take it a step further and they go even further to look at like what are like the processes inside the body that really focus on why does it matter. So for them, they kind of know the very, very fine details of the body, while the nurses have a little bit more of a general, broad section of it.
Okay, got it. So doctors are almost like specialists or something, like in that sense, with that very, very specific info.
Yeah, and they focus more on the disease rather than like the holistic part of a person. And for nurses, that's where we come in, the holistic part of it.
Okay. You can't have one without the other, it seems like.
Yeah, if it was just doctors, a lot of people would be very angry at them.
Oh my goodness. Just wondering, what's a typical workday look like for you as a nurse?
So I can break it, for me, I work as a bedside nurse. I can break it off into like two sections. I have the night shift and the day shift. I've done a little bit of day shift before, and essentially the day, you're doing 12-hour days for 3 days a week, which has always had a lot of people interested about, you know, being able to expand yourself. But in those 3 days, you really work yourself out.
Oh, really? How so?
My day starts off. Now that I work nights, I come in. I have to learn essentially almost the entire medical history off the top of my head as soon as I come in, and then be able to sift through all the information and say, okay, here's what they're here for. Here's what we are planning to do or what we are doing for them, and then make sure you follow it and then tell us if there's any problems with it.
Yeah.
And so that's usually like in an hour. That usually happens in 1 hour.
Whoa.
And then from there, like I go in, double check on them, I do my assessments and meet them. I can have anywhere between 3 to 4 patients on my floor, which is focused on a lot of cardiac, heart issues, where we focus on heart surgery, we focus heart failure, a lot of, and yeah, just anything around the heart. That's like our main focus. And so you can have 3 to 4 patients, sometimes 5, depending on the situations.
Yeah.
And like you have to be able to assess all of them within like the first 2 hours and check to see if there's anything that they need to have addressed, whether they be in pain, or they have a fever, or anything like that. Or if their heart is, having a weird, funky rhythm, do that. And then also on top of that, be able to continue their routine of giving them their nighttime medications, allowing them to rest, follow any other orders that were not executed during the day, and then try to finish it up and still give it enough time for the patients to rest.
Wow. Sounds like you guys are doing a lot and memorizing a lot.
Yeah, and also on top of that, you have to be able to document all of that so it protects yourself as well.
Yeah, of course. So a lot of note-taking too?
Yeah, a lot of note-taking. Like I have a single scrap of paper that I walk around with the entire shift that gives me everything, that I write down anything that I need to know or that's happened throughout the afternoon. And then when the next nurses come on, it's like, okay, here's what happens, here's the plan, here's what we're doing.
Okay.
And then, so be able to focus on that and then see what the doctor needs to have done. Then if anything happens throughout the shift, if there's anything like if someone had a heart attack or someone, codes or starts dying or anything like that, that's when we have to jump in and essentially we have to be prepared at any moment that could happen. And it's happened a couple of times for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've seen
so
that.
you always have to be vigilant just in case something were to happen.
Yeah.
You're always ready to go.
Exactly, yeah. And
Very good.
Yeah, we've had incidences where a person suddenly went into a really bad rhythm and like I remember it. I was sitting down, we were just talking, catching up on all of our paperwork and stuff, and then we just look and we hear a noise and we see the rhythm is all out of whack, and we're like, okay, we got to run in there and take care of things. And the entire floor, all of the nurses just come in. We all have our specific duties and grab everything. And thankfully, the guy made it out all right. I remember I was pumping on the guy's chest for sure, and all that stuff. Thankfully, he made it through. So
that's excellent.
So you have to be sharp at any moment because anything like that can happen at any time.
Right on. Sounds almost like a movie or something.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen often, but it's like when it happens, you need to be ready for it.
Of course. That kind of reminds me. I know that there's a lot of, like if you're watching the criminal sci-fi films and the shows on TV, and people are throwing all sorts of terms out there, medical terms and funky. Like
the medical dramas, like the Good Doctor and Grey's Anatomy and all that.
Or like what we were mentioning earlier, someone might be like, get us the blood transfusion carburetor and put it at maximize thrust power. Now it sounds like a spaceship when I put it that way. But I was just wondering, like, you as someone who's already in the field, what's your take on some of these? I mean, do they actually portray the nursing and medical field in an accurate light, or yes and no, hit or miss?
So I don't watch too much of the medical dramas as much, but I have seen like 1 or 2 episodes of like the Grey's Anatomies or the Good Doctor or whatever have you. And a lot of the medical dramas are focused more towards the doctors, so you don't see as much of the nurses as much. There are a couple shows, I think it's like Nurse Jackie, I've heard of one, I've never seen it myself, but very much like across the board when it comes to a lot of the medical dramas, it's more about the drama first, then the medical condition second. And so it's just kind of like it's the setting for it. They'll throw a couple numbers out there and say this is what this is.
Yeah.
And just to make it sound like it's fancy. I'm sure that they do have medical consultants who do that.
Who just double check it, so
double check it just
we
to
don't
make
want to
sure.
look like idiots.
Yeah, we don't want to look like
Not
idiots or
complete
anything like
idiots.
that. But like when they have like an emergency or something, it's like, they have a protocol, and sometimes when you watch the shows, it's like you feel like they're following it, and sometimes they aren't. They are.
Yeah.
So it varies, but for the most part, it's more drama than the medical aspect of it. There are a few that do have those moments, but it's like few and far in between.
Yeah, wow. No, that makes sense. I was just curious, again, just what your opinion was when you start seeing stuff that, okay, well, if you hear something that's obviously wrong,
Yeah.
or just like doesn't make sense, it's like, I don't know if they should be showing that, or I don't know.
It's like, it's like they get the diagnosis and they get like a general idea of the disease correctly, but I think it's more about the thought process of like what they do to find the disease or what they do to treat the disease. It's not always consistent, I guess is the best way to describe it, because there are points where they're like, oh yeah, that is this, and it's like, oh yeah, that's a good representation of this or that, like, whether it be a diagnosis or whatever. But beyond that, like it's more focused on the drama, and I understand that's where the money comes in.
That's very true. That's very true. We want to go and watch some people get into an emotional hoopla rather than trying to get a lesson on medical.
Yeah,
I guess so.
I mean, I think if you really want to like learn, do any of that, a lot of people have the ability to just go out and volunteer and really go volunteer at your hospital and really check it out and see what really happens in the hospital on a day-to-day basis.
Wow.
Yeah, you can volunteer. I'm sure a lot of hospitals do have a program to allow people to try it. For a lot of people who aspire to be medical students or nursing students and who probably don't know anything about the field, it would be a great opportunity to kind of get your feet wet and take a look. It's like, oh, what's going on over here? Can I take a look? May I participate? May I ask a question?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that they're more than willing to answer any of those.
Very cool. So, getting right into the middle of the action.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you can totally just see what's going on. Like you could be sitting there, and then you'll notice when something really bad happens and everybody's rushing. You can be there to really see this is what really happens in a hospital instead of just watching it on TV.
That's very true. I like the way you word that. In regards to skill, education, and qualities that are required to be a nurse, which ones do you feel are the most important?
I think the one, I can't really say one thing per se that would represent a nurse, but definitely one thing is being able to be humble and be able to understand that going into this field is not about you. A lot of people think about it, they do it for the glory. They do when they pick their jobs, it's all about the glory, about, oh, I want to invent something, or I want to be the best boss.
Yeah, the power and the prestige, right?
Yeah, the power and the prestige behind that. But really, for a nurse, it's about focusing not on yourself, but focusing on the patient, their needs, their problems, their concerns. Because you're working as a nurse, you're seeing a person for the first time at which could potentially be one of their lowest points in their life.
Yes,
when you end up in the hospital. And with that's why, you need to understand, like, this isn't about you. It's about the patient. And so
very true.
You need to be able to understand that if they're screaming at you and they're mad at you for one reason or another, they're probably just stressed out. Life has gone out of whack. Maybe just in a single instance, or it could be more ways than one, and you're just meeting them for the first time.
Oh,
and so being able to really look at that and be able to understand that your focus is on them and not yourself.
Wow, it puts it into perspective, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Dang, I didn't really think about it that way. I mean, I knew that people were sick, but I mean, as far as, exactly what you just said, I mean, they're not going to be in the best shape.
Yeah, and there are going to be points where you will see stuff that people may never see in their lifetime. Wow. And you need to be able to, like, when people say they want to experience new things and they go into that, not all experiences are going to be good. Especially in the medical field, you will have good experiences, but at the same time, there are going to be very emotional experiences.
Yeah.
And if you are a person that can handle those kind of emotions and handle that kind of, I guess you could say, drama or whatever it be, then you should take a look into it. You're passionate about, or you can ultimately being able to focus on the person rather than yourself is probably the biggest thing for a nurse.
Wow. I see. In regards to skills too, I mean, it's almost like you have to be kind of good with people also, right?
Yeah, you definitely have to. Like, I've never met a nurse who's like, oh, I can't talk to people, because it's like, how did you even get in? How did you even get passed through school? Because ultimately in school you do meet patients, and then you have to be able to talk to them, be able to, talk to them and be able to talk about, good things and even the more difficult things, whether situations where I've had to talk to people about end of life care. Talk to family members about how they feel about their dad, potentially passing away over the next possible year or next year.
Yeah, that's tough.
And you have to be able to have those kind of conversations. It's an art form. It's not a science, and it's something that you have to be able to talk to someone through and be able to not sound rude at some points.
No, I hear ya. I mean, geez, if you're gonna be dropping down that kind of serious news, I mean, at least have some tact, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you have to be able to, and you have to at least be able to be there to help them out emotionally.
Yes. Yeah.
Because the doctors, they focus on the medical aspect. Like I said, they focus on the disease. They don't necessarily have the time. They sometimes don't have the time in this day and age to help with emotional aspects. And us as nurses, we have to be able to help with them with that.
Well, that's a big part of it, especially with trying to accept that the worst could happen.
Yeah, and it's an idea that not a lot of us can learn, that tend to think about in this day and age. When you think of your own parents, you think your own grandparents. You say, oh, you become so accustomed to seeing them on a daily basis, and then it gets to a point where they start getting sick, and then they start declining, and suddenly you're being asked the question that you probably have never asked yourself ago. It's like, are you going to be okay with grandma or grandpa or mom and dad? Are you? Do you have all your qualms been said? It's like, I've always talked to people about. I've actually taken care of a few people who held on to their parents a little bit longer because they had some guilt, some regret, something that they felt like they passed right away. And,
oh wow!
And so those kind of situations come up, and you got to be able to handle all of that. If they open up to you about their entire life story, to be able to take it in and do all that.
Dang, that is heavy.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming. It can be very overwhelming at times, but it is probably the most you can ever learn, not only about yourself, but like about other people and the stories that you hear from all walks of life.
That's deep. That's deep. I mean, I wasn't gonna go over there, but
it really happens.
You know what? We're actually gonna come back to that topic, but just to keep things moving, I was just wondering, in a competitive job market, what makes certain applicants stand out from most of their peers?
I think the first thing above all else, and I'm sure this applies to every other field out there, is experience.
Yes.
Like, ultimately, experience trumps everything else, especially in the medical field. If you have a diversity of experience in the nursing field, that's even better, especially for what you're gunning for. For a lot of us, we start off in the medical surgical units, where a lot of people in the medical field do give it crap, saying like, oh, this is the lowest part. But at the same time, that's where you get the most diversity of patients. That's where you learn like all the different diseases, all the different surgeries. And so having that core foundation, variety of experience allows you to elevate to other areas. And then as you elevate further, you start specializing or those fields that you want to end up in, whether it be related to policy, whether it be related to cardiac or neurology or psychology, whatever it may be. That's really where I think that's where like people tend to stand out more. If you're gunning for a specific position, look at what it takes to get there, what kind of experience, what kind of patients are they dealing with. That kind of experience and work from there. A master's degree doesn't hurt either in this day and age now. A lot of nurses are getting their bachelor's faster than ever now. So in order for you to stand out, you can pick up a master's degree along the way. at the most for me, I got my master's degree. It took me about a year and a half.
Wow.
And it like was all online. It happened a lot quicker than I thought it would. I just had my head down and, continuing my day to day, and then doing my homework when I got home, and then just repeated the process until a year and a half later. Now I've got a master's degree, and now I stand out from everybody else who just have bachelor's degrees.
Oh, cool. So keeping your nose to the grindstone.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Having the experience, and then if you want to expand education, does help all points.
Yeah. Got it. Very good. And what you mentioned earlier too, just volunteer work. Also, does that help you?
Volunteer work. Volunteer work totally helps. Like even, what I was gonna say. There's like a lot of places that you can go to volunteer, and if it's related to the medical field, it's a good way to meet somebody. It's a good way to get to know like an organization or a rep or anything like that. I've had a couple of occasions where, when I was doing my master's program, I wasn't really thinking about working in surgery, but when I was there and doing my rotation there, I met these people who work as medical product reps.
Oh, wow.
And I had a chance to talk with them. They were showing me the products that they're trying to sell to the offices, and like talking it up. And before then, if they ever want me to consider it, it's like they gave me a business card and said, hey, email us anytime, then we could talk about maybe getting you in. And so really, volunteer work, anything that can get your name out there, and talking to the different types of people out there in the field can get you exposed and connected to others.
Right on.
Way better than a LinkedIn or anything like that.
Really just getting yourself just connected with everybody and just involved, right?
Exactly.
And networking all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Very cool. And just like you said, it really comes down to experience too.
Yeah.
All right, very cool. So if someone wanted to be a nurse, how could they get started in, what would you say the training is like?
Well, with any colleges, I'm sure there's a lot out there that have nursing programs. I recommend, if possible, to go for a public university or a public college. You can get your entry-level nursing at a bachelor's level at a public university, or you can get an associate's degree at a junior college, and that's where I got mine first, and then move up to it. Overall, the programs take roughly 2 years for the nursing program itself, 2.5 years. But you have to take into consideration prerequisites and things like that, so that's another 2 years. So you completely round out about 4.5 to 5 years totally to get that. But if you start right out of the gate from high school and do that, you're done by 21, 22. And then you have like a bachelor's degree in nursing, and more likely than not, you'll be able to find a job right out of the gate. You have to be really good in the sciences. You can't really ignore that. You can't kind of breeze your way, because the anatomy, the physiology, that is going to be the core, the basics, and everything that you're going to have to base the next levels of nursing off of. And that's really where it starts.
Wow.
I recommend a bachelor's right out of the gate if you can. If you can't, get an associate's degree. It's an extra year to get your bachelor's, but you at least have the license under your belt, which is probably the toughest thing to do, is getting the license and being able to challenge the state board. I've had
Making sure you're legit.
Yeah, I've had way too many panic attacks just thinking about taking the board.
Oh my goodness.
It is a brutal exam.
Okay, so the board is an exam for nurses, right?
Yes, yeah. So for a nursing licensure, you do have to take an exam after you've completed your program. It's a very dynamic exam in the sense that you answer a question, you're given a harder.
Of course, yeah.
So the idea is not to answer so many questions right or wrong per se, but you're going to be like on a fluctuation. If you're getting easier questions, that means you're not doing well. If you're getting harder questions,
oh my god!
If you're getting harder questions, you're doing better. But the problem is that you can't determine if you're doing good or bad, because the minimum amount of requirement is to pass the exam is 75 questions.
Okay.
The machine will determine if you have passed enough by that time or not passed enough at that time. But if somewhere in the middle, you keep going.
Oh,
the longest I've ever seen anyone from my cohort who took the exam, I finished at, I think, 81 questions, and then they shut off from me.
Yeah.
I've had a friend who went out and took like 235
What in the
questions.
world?
And they still passed, but but they never reveal how, what our official scores were. They just tell you if you pass or don't. And
Wow.
I've had a friend who got 76 questions. Like when he got past 75, he got scared that he was on the borderline of failing. And then he answered the next question. He doesn't remember if it was right or wrong, but as soon as he did that, he got cut off right then and there, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, I think I just failed."
That's intense.
Yeah, and so that kind of thing, that's really it's fairly traumatic, but it really does, sharpen your mindset when it comes to being a nurse.
Wow. So do you actually get your you have to pass that test to get that license though, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, so if I have this straight, it makes things easier if you can go into a nursing program at like a college.
Yeah.
So either for a bachelor's or an associate's.
Yeah.
And then after you get that, then you can go and take that state board exam, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then after that, then you're now a nurse.
At that point, you are a nurse. You are a registered nurse. Your name
Very
will
cool.
your name will be registered on the state, and you'll be able to work at.
Okay, so that now becomes public information
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you are now a nurse.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh wow, pretty neat. Very cool. So I know it's no secret that you and I, we have a lot of friends who are in the medical field who are nurses.
Yeah.
And I've seen on either Facebook or their LinkedIn pages a whole bunch of different I don't want to say like acronyms, but I've seen stuff like CNA, LPN, RN, and just some other stuff. And let me see here. I did list it down, and I was just actually wondering if you could tell me and our audience just a little bit of the key differences, like just core key differences of these different things. Like a CNA, what's that?
So CNA, certified nursing assistant. Essentially, it's being able to help the nurse with some of the duties. So things like being able to, help the patient go to the bathroom, able to feed the patient, checking vital signs, able to just check in on the patient and help with like any other like nuanced needs that they need, whether turn off the lights or get prepped for bed or things like that. That's where they can help out.
Okay. How about
it definitely does vary from state to state depending on what the CNA can do.
Okay. All the ones that I listed on here are all nurses, right?
Yeah. They're all nurses. They're all nurses of varying levels.
Okay, so they actually it's
like for the nurse.
Like a,
kind of like a tier system. So
okay.
like you said, the CNA and then
and then LPN.
LPN, which also can be substituted as LVN, as in Victor. So LVN, which is a licensed vocational nurse, and so that's kind of like the next stage.
From a CNA, right?
From a CNA,
okay.
Yeah. And so there are a couple programs, and essentially what a licensed vocational nurse is that you have the ability to assess the patient, you have the ability to do some of that stuff, and pass mainly oral medications. Really, you can medications, pills. There are some probably restrictions depending on what they are. I don't know off of them on top of my head.
No, that's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, so they are able to do some assessments and then be able to write off some.
Okay, cool. And then RN just
RN, yeah, and then RN is like
nurse.
Is like a full-fledged nurse at that point, I would say. From there I think the difference, you have to look at it from an LVN to an RN.
Yeah.
And RN is able to give more types of medications through just as pills. You're able to give IV medications, subcutaneous, like shots and like that of nature. And really, like the differences between that are huge. It's all, as a nurse, you have to be able to know the implications and side effects or react what could happen with those side effects.
Okay.
And as well, you could also, as an RN, end up working in critical care in ICU. So you're dealing with someone who is on a ventilator or dealing on kind of things, and so you can end up in that.
Wow. And everything else I have on here, I haven't really seen. Like, for instance, CRNP, CRNA, DNP, MSN, or BSN. Are those common or not really? Or yes or no?
So the easiest things I can do it from, like, I guess a tier system. So you go from RN. You go from an RN and then if you are an RN, you most likely are a BSN or an ADN, ADN being Associate's Degree of Nursing.
Yeah.
BSN is your Bachelor's of Science in
Oh,
Nursing.
okay.
And then MSN is your Master's degree.
Yeah.
And usually there's an emphasis attached to it, like whether it be teaching, research, whatever it may be.
Like a specialty on
Like
top
a
of
specialty within it. Then you have CRNA, which is a Certified Registered Nurse Anesthetist, which is a specialty where you can essentially independently or independently work as like an anesthetist, anesthesiologist, be able to, give those kind of medications in a procedure, and then monitor the patient through a procedure and off of that afterwards. And it varies from state to state depending on if you have to be attached to a doctor who's an anesthesiologist or if you are able to do it on your own. But that is an option to go through from like where I'm at. Like if I'm just a registered nurse, I can go for CRNA.
Oh, okay. Well, any of these you can go into, right?
Yeah, exactly. Any of them you can go into, and then there's also CRNP, which is
I've never heard of that one.
That one is actually So I don't. That one's not really one that we say too much. It's just an NP, it's just a nurse practitioner.
Oh, okay.
Or FNP, family nurse practitioner.
Yeah.
And essentially, like I said before, it's like you have similar privileges to a doctor, where you are writing prescriptions, you are seeing assessments on a much more detailed level, epic level.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of focusing on that, and depending on your privileges and your scope of practice varies. So there's that.
A lot
and
of little differences.
Yeah, a lot of little differences. It varies. And the last one I think you said DNP.
DNP, yeah. I've never heard of that one either.
So that one is like the doctorate of nursing practice. So you can kind of think of it like a PhD for
so
nursing.
is that like at the highest?
Yeah, like you're at a high level of doing research.
Wow.
Or research, or potentially trying to work as a doctor itself. It kind of fluctuates in there, and you're focused on the practice of it and trying to better the practice of the nurses and doing the research as needed.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's okay, cool. So that's like again the top tier.
Yeah.
This hierarchy.
You can and so like I said, like with nursing, with all those acronyms or whatever, maybe you can really branch off and pick where you want to go.
Okay, yeah, I just know that, my goodness, when I was doing a little bit of reading on this, I mean, I'm just seeing all these acronyms everywhere. It's like an alphabet soup or something.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what am I reading?
There's a lot of other things
what is all this?
Yeah, there's a lot more out there. There's like, you'll see lots of like little acronyms that just kind of get tacked on for everybody's signature.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you have certifications and things like that, and so you have to try to remember which some of them are and some of them are not.
Got it. Yeah, normal people, the general person like me is gonna be like, okay, I think I'm gonna guess what that is.
Yeah. At the point, it's like if you see RN, at least it's like, okay, at least they're a nurse.
yeah. That's the only thing.
Yeah, everything else it's like
got before.
Everything else is probably more business related or specialty related.
More specialty. There you go. Okay, so that actually makes sense. Thank you. That makes a lot more sense. Now I know that there's all sorts of things that go on in the nursing and medical industry, but in your experience as a registered nurse, what are some of the pros and cons that you can share?
Like working in the field,
like being a nurse.
Oh, being a
nurse
nurse.
specific.
Nurse specific, I would say a lot of flexibility. I would say on the job opportunities, there's plenty of job opportunities for nurses to expand themselves right out of the gate.
Yeah.
For them another pro would probably be the flexibility of schedule. Like I said before, if you are working in a hospital, more likely than not you are working 3 12s, so 3 12-hour shifts, and then you get 4 days off. You have the options of working day or night shifts depending on what schedule is or whatever their needs are. And so with that, you can really maximize your time. Like for a lot of people who work 9 to 5, they tend to feel like, oh, my weekends are so busy, I have to take care of the car, I gotta go do this or go do that. And so for me, ever since I've been a nurse, it's like now that I have a day off, I could have a day off, on a Wednesday, and everybody is going to be out and about or like at work and doing something, while I can go to the grocery store and probably be empty half the time and be able to
take care of all your business,
take care of all the business,
a bunch
and then
of people around you,
and still be able to hang out on the weekend and such.
Wow.
But at the same time, it also is a double-edged sword that you work 3 days, and since healthcare doesn't sleep, doesn't stop,
Yes.
we do have to work weekends. We do have to work through holidays, depending on the needs. But we've tried to find systems that can help not destroy your social life or your family life outside of your
alleviate
career.
those outside tensions.
Yeah,
right?
so things like, for me, I have to work one summer holiday a year and one winter holiday. So the major holidays would be like Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year, and I have to make a decision. It's like, okay, you got to pick one that you can work, and then one that you can't, and then one maybe we might need you for this.
Okay, but at least you have the ability to choose.
Yeah, and depending on the hospital, depending on their policies, you might end up rotating, you might end up staying the same.
Yeah.
It's very flexible, and so when it comes to like planning, I think I could put this as a pro and a con, is planning can be very difficult when you're trying to meet up with other people and you're trying to meet up with friends. Say, for example, since if you work like a 9-to-5 lifestyle, you guys can only hang out on the weekends. Maybe sometimes in the evenings, on the weekdays, but then
when work is a little slower.
Yeah, when work is a little slower, it's like, we can meet on the evenings, but
Yeah.
I can't. It's like, I can't go out and stay longer because I have to go back and sleep and wake up early for work.
Yes. Yeah.
In that sort of sense, it does feel isolating at times where, everybody else is out and you're just kind of like, oh, what do I do now? But yeah, it can be a freedom, it can be a con, no matter how you look at that. Really, a pro for me is knowing, having the knowledge of the medical field, having the knowledge of what can we expect out of our bodies. Like for me, I know based on my own family history, I'm at risk for heart disease, and I know exactly what to anticipate. And if I can do better for myself and try to be healthier by trying to use those kind of limits.
Okay, so having that foreknowledge will actually help you not just by knowing like your family history, but you can diagnose yourself, kind of, right?
Yeah, and you can help prevent from any diseases from happening. You do to reduce
Very cool.
it. You can even pass that on to friends and family. You can pass that on to other people.
Yeah.
And even having that knowledge, if something goes wrong, like in a friend or family, they are in the hospital, and a lot of people think that the medical jargon is like overwhelming. It doesn't. If I'm able to explain that to a friend of them and say, hey, look, this is what it's all about. This is gonna happen.
Yeah.
And kind of ease their mind a little bit. That really does help. Yeah.
Peace of mind is important, definitely, especially if you're in that kind of situation where, okay, well, this looks like it could be life and death.
Yes, this could be.
I need that peace of mind.
Yeah, like if you need to, like if something sounds so complex or something sounds like it's life-threatening, I'm standing next to it's like, oh well, no, that's nothing. It's really just this little thing.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I know it's kind of funny because I've heard this one before. Someone asking a crowd of people, who in this room likes surprises? And everyone raises their hands. They're like, no, you don't. You only like the surprises that are good.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess like as long as you set the expectation for people, I mean, it's whether it's good or bad, as long as they know what's happening, really that's what matters.
Yeah,
too, right?
and that's really, for us, is we try to give people the ability to understand it. Try to be able to take all the medical jargon or whatever, special words that they throw out there, and then try to boil it down into something that, any person can understand.
Yeah.
If we can do that really does help a lot of us. Going back to a con, I would say if you are working a night shift, sleep is definitely a problem. Sleep is definitely a problem. I'm the type of person who tries to enjoy their time off. You have breaks in between. You're sleeping during the day, and then you wake up, and then it's like 8 o'clock at night, and you're wide awake. And for me, living with my family, it's like, I can't really go out and do something because I don't want to disturb them while they're sleeping. or I can't really go to the gym because the gym is closed, or unless you have like a 24-hour fitness or whatever it may be. So you're kind of limited in that sort of aspect. But that's like another aspect of nursing.
Yeah, that just comes with a job, right?
Yeah, it just comes with a job. And oh yeah, a con. I think when you mention that, everybody says is that you will get hit at some point. You will get hit. You will hurt at some point. It is part of the job. It's important to remember to always take care of yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, you got to be able to protect yourself. If you aren't able to protect yourself, how will you be able to protect others? You know.
That's very true. So self-care. You gotta be mindful of yourself.
Yeah, a lot of self-care.
That's very good. Very good. Jeez, 12-hour days.
Yeah, a lot of people say it's like, oh, how do you get through 8-hour shifts? It's like, oh, 8 hours turns into nothing. I mean, I'll be honest. I'll be openly honest. I have had days where I have gone a full 8 hours and I have not eaten a lunch.
Oh my god.
And then, you hear those people saying like, oh, is it lunch break yet? And then I've had, my girlfriend tell me like, oh yeah, it's 4 hours. We're gonna go take our breaks and all that stuff. I was like, oh, that's nice. And then it's like, for me, it's like, oh, I'm so used to like, oh, it's 8 hours. Oh yeah, I should be taking a lunch break. Let me go take care of that real quick.
Oh wow, but it's because you're so involved and so focused in what you're doing. Too.
Exactly. Yeah.
That is quite something. Now, I know that when you're so focused in your work, I imagine that it could be really easy to take your homework with you, especially when family and friends ask you for medical advice. I know that some people might, I don't know, if they've been at work for too long, they get bugged if someone even like mentions something. Like, for instance, if let's say I was, I don't know, doing like a sales job or whatever for a particular product, and then someone started asking me about it, and I had to deal with 12, 14 hours of hearing just that, I might get sick of it.
Yeah.
So I was actually wondering, do you have any thoughts or opinions about like when your friends or family do ask you for medical advice, or it's something that you totally welcome?
So for me, I totally welcome it. I know some people, everybody has their bad days, and so when it happens on a bad day, it's like you try to separate yourself from it. And when it comes to taking home work, for us, it's more about the mental stress, really, about it, not about like what we've done or anything like that. Like what were the problems that we had during the day, and it's just like a mental de-stress. But the problem is that with nursing, it's a 24-hour job where we're constantly rotating out. A person is constantly either better or worse. I've had situations where someone was doing very well for like the first 11 hours, and then at the last hour, suddenly something dramatic happened that I had to try to patch it up as much as I can before I got off of shift. And then when I got off the shift, I felt giddy, and I was just like, well, I wish I could have done more. I wish I could have done this or that. Yeah. And really, it's also a discipline in and of itself just to be able to take a break and say like, look, we've done all we can, and separate ourselves from the situation, because if we're constantly thinking about it, and for us, when we take care of patients, it'll sit in the back of your mind while it's like, oh, I wonder whatever happened to so-and-so when this happened. And so there's a point where a lot of us nurses, especially when I first started out, I was so worried about so many patients I took care of. A coworker of mine had to tell me, it's like, hey, look, you let go, did all you could, just let it go. If you're the other person, worry about it. You got to be able to let it go and just relax and go. So it's really, it's hard to let go sometimes, but it is. When it comes to giving medical advice, I try to be a little bit more broad about it, just because for me, like, information is power. The more that I know, the better I can help you. And so give you general ideas of here's what you should do, and ultimately I say, go talk to the doctor if you're very concerned about this at like a much more deeper, but I can guide you at least in the right direction as far as that goes.
Got it. Very good.
If you feel like something's wrong with your leg, it's like, oh, I can do, quick little checks. It's like, oh, it doesn't hurt that bad. It's like, maybe we'll try a little ice. If it doesn't, gets worse or anything like that, it's like, I really recommend checking the doctor just to be safe,
Got it. Like if someone were to, I don't know, if someone were just walking in front of us and they just pat out, you would be able to like at least assist them until an ambulance came or something.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah. And for that, we do have to be trained to be able to respond to those kind of things as well.
Oh, wow. Very good, very good. I know that's something that they were kind of telling us a little bit about when I was learning a little bit of CPR.
Yeah, that's definitely a requirement that we have to be able to do CPR. And I've taken also advanced cardiac life support as well, where knowing how to give medications, what kind of medications, what does the heart look like, and all that stuff.
Got it. See, and I already have a hard time remembering how the blood flows through which ventricles and everything.
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, aorta starts with an A, and so does away. So I think it pumps the blood away.
Yeah.
No, I know that when you were talking about which I'm working with different patients and, you know, just kind of wondering what happens to them and stuff. And that, again, not everyone is in the best of health when they are, you know, needing a nurse or a doctor. And I'm sure that you've probably seen a lot of, like, death around you, right? I'm sure.
It's happened.
Now, is death something that, like, for some people it's very hard on them, but in your profession as a nurse, is, you know, death something you just have to just try and get used to, or?
When it comes to death, we all take it differently in a lot of different cultures.
Yes.
When it comes to that, you know, for someone like me, like I'm very young, I've only done this for 3 years. I've already experienced death a couple of times for a couple of patients. And not, like, I wouldn't say none of them have, like, death hasn't gotten easier, but like being able to go through the motions has helped with the coping. It does bring a perspective and remind that we don't have as much time to live on Earth, and how being able to spend time with the family matter. Because I'm sure a lot of people, when you go talk to other people, they don't think about that. They don't think about, like, oh, what about, you know, funeral expenses or anything like that,
or
not life support or anything of that nature, because, you know, it's in the back of their mind. No one ever thinks that they're going to die.
That's very.
And so for me to, you know, when someone does die, it just sets as a reminder. It's like, oh yeah, just, you know, for all the worries that we have, we need to just be able to remember what we have in front of us and what we can enjoy. Always have those worry words where people are saying, like, oh, I want to live to 100, I want to live to, you know, whatever age or whatever, however it might be.
Oh, of course, yeah.
It's changed for me, knowing it's like, I know I'm not gonna live to 100. Like, I know that for sure. Considering, like, how do I want to look when I get to a certain age? Do I want to still be able to walk? Do I still want to be able to talk?
Oh yeah.
See your kids and get out of the house even? What defines your quality of life at that point, you know? Are you, if you are constantly having to go to the doctor the other day for a certain thing, is that still okay for you? How much are you compromising to stay alive to that level of health, you know?
Yeah.
And it varies. So, for example, dialysis, like, I know that's a hot topic right now.
Definitely.
And so for dialysis patients, like, when your kidneys are not able to pee, you got to get rid of the fluid somehow, dialysis comes in. So for a person, like typical patient, they would have to see a dialysis center 3 times a day just to drain out the excess fluid that they have on them. That process is not quick. It takes, like, anywhere between 4 hours, depending on how it is. So they're sitting in a chair all day having, you know, their fluids getting drained out so that they'll be able to function.
Wow.
And from there, that comfortable for you? Are you okay living like that for the next years you have? Or until another issue comes up, and another issue.
Jeez.
So when it comes to death, it's a matter of learning to it and then just enjoying what you have in front. Before being in the medical field, you will experience death. I think at that point you just have to be able to process it, being able to look at it for when do you feel prepared, how do you feel about your other family members, and when do they feel like they're ready, and, you know, try to have that kind of conversation at some point.
And really just having a better understanding of it, right? I think that's what scares most people.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of us, it's just a matter of, when it comes to death, it's like, what happens next? No one really knows. No one knows really, like, after you die, what happens next, and that scares why we tend to not think about it, because we like not knowing.
Yeah, it freaks us out. The uncertainty freaks people out.
Exactly.
No, I totally hear ya. Got it. And I know that there are a lot of people who get squeamish when it comes to blood. I know, like, for a nurse like yourself, you've probably drawn blood a gazillion times.
Yeah. I've seen blood in a lot of places that I should not have seen them in there. I should not be
You're like,
there.
that doesn't look like it belongs. That's the one
Exactly.
thing that doesn't belong.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen it in a lot of places.
Okay, got it. So I know when it comes to blood, though, I know for some people it's not easy when they get their shots or whatever. I mean, they have, like, for myself even, I actually look away because I'm just like, oh, I don't want to see the needle get stuck in me. I mean, I'm fine looking at the blood package getting filled up.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
knowing
yeah.
that, that's my blood, and if I don't want to see the needle in my arm. So I know for being a nurse and or a doctor or anyone in the medical field, what's the best way that people just get over it? You know, that fear of just seeing blood.
I mean, when it comes to like blood and all that, you can always start small, I would say.
Yeah.
You can start with something simple as like a little basic paper cut. If you got pricked or something, a little bit of blood. It's like if you get comfortable with that, slowly, step up a little bit. Maybe when someone's drawing your blood, whether it be for labs or for a donation or anything like that, it's like if you're a little bit more comfortable with that, then you can look down there. You can take a look at the needle. You can take a look at the bag and be like, okay, I'm okay with the blood now. It's like a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then like slowly but surely at some point, maybe if someone's bleeding out a little bit too much or a little more than usual, then kind of like, okay, you can kind of look there.
Yeah.
But then at some point it's like the more exposed that you are to blood, the better you get used to seeing it. Not really one way to go about it because when you jump into nursing, that's kind of like the first thing is that you got to be able to handle blood
and like stick someone with a needle.
and stick someone with a needle. Yeah. I remember from my program, we had practice on a plastic arm.
Oh, okay.
And be able to handle a needle and be able to know how to. Then, really, that doesn't even feel like normal until you actually go there and stick
and do
someone.
it for real on a real person.
Yeah, when you do it on a real person, it's like, okay. And then now that I've done it so many times, now when I get my own blood drawn, it's like, sure, I'll kind of like not stare at the needle, but then it's like when it's in, then I'll look or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, I know what the feeling or sensation has been.
See, I just imagine something like this. If I were trying to be a nurse and you were like my teacher or my mentor or something, and I'm getting stuck with a needle, you just grab my head and face it toward the needle and be like, don't look away.
Oh yeah, no, that's the worst.
Burn it into your eyes.
That's the worst part is that you need to be able to not look away.
Yeah.
And I've known, I think there was at least like one nurse who would kind of like cover one eye and then do it, and I'd be like, no, you gotta need. It's like they got over it. They eventually did, do two eyes. But at first, when they started, they tried to stick with one eye because they were not really used to poking someone. And
so, yeah. I mean, for us normal people, it's not every day we go jabbing needles in people.
Exactly, right.
Unless we're gonna go and I don't know, do some serious drugs or something.
Right. That's usually what people associate it with.
Shoot us up. Shoot me up, buddy. I'm just joking. So I know, wrapping up, what's your favorite thing about being a nurse and why?
It has to be the experiences. Like, the life experience that you can hear from other people. Like, what I love is when I get to talk to someone who's like 80 or 90, and when they talk to me, so they'll talk to me, it's like, oh, I remember when the radio came in. I remember when I first got our TV.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and I remember when the TVs were first a thing, and I remember speaking to someone when they said, I remember when we didn't have any of that. We didn't have a radio, we didn't have TV. If you wanted to go, you had to go walk over to the movie theater to see the silent picture at the movie.
And it was a whole different world back then.
Yeah, and how it was living. It was always interesting because when you hear about like life events or history in that matter, you always think of the major events, like all the wars, the things. But you never get a chance to really ask, like, what was it like to live in that era and describe it to us. And so being able to talk to some of those people and say, hey, look, one of the biggest things I learned that back then when the world felt bigger to them and they were more familiar with their communities, many people didn't lock their doors. Many people like just had their doors unlocked and people were able to, walk in and say, hey buddy, hey neighbor, I need to get a cup of sugar or something like that.
Because everybody knew each other.
Because everybody knew each other. Everybody knew each other on the neighborhood, and kids were playing outside and doing this.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
And so really just understanding and learning about how it was back then, and then comparing us to get out of it, and then the life experiences. It's always cool to hear about travel stories or anything that they went through, whether they were in the war or anything of that nature. So those are always that's always the one thing I love learning from my patients.
Yeah, just kind of learning about the different world that they were in compared to now.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And it's great to see how far we've come too.
Yeah.
As a society.
Yeah,
definitely.
actually. Yeah, no, it's crazy to even think about it. When you're in the nursing program, you learn about first things first, hand hygiene. Washing your hands. Do that. You learn that not too long ago. I think it was maybe 20 years ago, when they didn't really wash their hands as much.
I think it was like that. I heard a story about Typhoid Mary or something.
Yeah, exactly.
What was that exactly? It was some chick that was working.
So
not washing her hands, and it's
no. I think it was more I think it's I don't remember it, but the idea is the whole concept of it is that essentially you're not passing everything on from one person to the next. And the idea was that a person who had typhoid. A nurse was taking it on their hands or something like that, and this was before that passed on to the next person, and she literally, it's anytime she was touching the patient, it's oh, you just got typhoid, and she didn't even realize she didn't even realize she was passing it on to all these other patients until they realized it's maybe hand hygiene is a thing that should be happening. Maybe we should be washing our hands in between meeting patients so it's clean or anything of that.
My God.
In this day and age when we have hand sanitizers at every corner, it's how can you imagine that now? Can you imagine that back then? You go up and it's I just did surgery on someone. Hey, here, let me shake your hand. And all that stuff. I didn't wash it. Don't worry. It's don't even worry about it.
Oh, don't even worry about it. I mean, the other guy just
they just happen to have hepatitis or HIV or anything. Like that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, when I think about it now, it's so gross.
Yeah.
Wow, but I mean that's amazing how it's just kind of a recent thing too.
Yep.
That's why history is important.
Yep.
As much as I didn't like it in school, that is why it's
it is definitely important to remember.
Cool. So what's your best piece of advice for anyone who wants to be a nurse?
My best advice.
Yeah, best piece of advice.
I would say if you're unsure if you want to be a nurse or anything like that, you can always get your nursing assistants first. You can always work up the ladder, like I said, what we described before, like a CNA or anything like that. It doesn't take that long to become a CNA. I think it is as much as 6 months to become one. And then from there, you can get your feet wet and learn from it. You don't have the time to be able to do that, and you just want to be able, or you don't know yet if you want to make that kind of commitment. Always volunteer first, check it out, and work in the hospital, ask the nurses what they do on a daily basis. How do they feel about it? Is it something that you would like to do? And really be perceptive about it, and not only about other people, but be perceptive about yourself, because it is not a job.
No, not at all.
You are dealing with people's lives on the line.
I hear you. As soon as you say that and we see an ambulance, my gosh.
It's do I gotta go back to work now? But no, you're not like at an office job where you're pushing paper. You're dealing with somebody who could be very well dead in the next year.
Yeah.
And maybe they could be dying right in front of you and you would not even realize it.
Yeah.
And so you have to be able to ask yourself, are you able to handle that much? Because I like to think that a lot of nurses, especially even when I started, was we're all gonna save lives, we're all gonna keep people alive. The mentality of it is, let's keep people alive. It's gonna happen 90% of the time, 90 to 95% of the time, but there's always gonna be those moments where it doesn't happen. It's only happened once in a while or anything like that, but be able to embrace what happens if it doesn't.
And accept.
Yeah,
that's
accept
the way that it could be.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Can't think of any other way to go and sum that up. My goodness. So, bonus question. Christian, what do you like to do in your free time, and why is this particularly important to you?
For me, what I do in my free time, I do a lot of video games. I've actually been learning to make a video game.
Oh, very cool.
And essentially learn like more tech things related because I am
Mm-hmm.
a huge techie. I love that, pop culture and tech and all that good stuff.
Oh yeah.
And for me, it's so far separated from the medical field. There's some things that can still connect you to the business or
Yeah.
anything like that, where it's like, oh, you go into business. Oh, I might end up learning about medical business. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
and now I'm back in the field again. It's like,
yeah.
or I go into this or that, and I got to go back, and then it somehow ties into the medical. But for me, this is like a completely separate thing. There are still some tech does connect me to it, but I try not to focus on that. Something I've grown up with, and something I've essentially.
Oh yeah, you and I both. No, I hear you. I mean, it's always good to have something that is, different. Because
Yeah.
if you stay in something for too long and you're always thinking about it, I mean, geez, sometimes you need a break.
Yeah.
Not just physically but mentally too. So.
Yeah, if you have something completely different, it like kind of breaks away the monotony. It kind of changes the perspective and lets you enjoy life a little bit more on the other side.
No, I hear you. Well, Christian, that is all of my questions. We've definitely learned a lot, so thank you so much for that. Do you have any final thoughts, special mentions, or anything that you'd like to share, with our audience?
Nothing. Really, if you want to be a nurse, first test it out. Go be a volunteer, check it out, and understand. Maybe you don't want to be. You want to be in the medical field. Maybe nursing's not for you, but maybe there's something else. That there's a lot of jobs out there. So really check that out first. And if you guys ever want to find me when I'm streaming, I'm at twitch.tv/ I think it's realcrispy99.
Okay,
So
and
you
that's
can always-
what channel? CHRISPY?
Yeah, 99. Yeah.
All right, cool. I will actually go and put anything that we have into the description and the links. So if you guys do want to go and see what Christian is up to outside of work, that you guys are more than welcome to. But other than that, that is our show. Again, this is Gabe with Casual Coffee Talk, and we will see you guys on the next episode.
Yeah.
So, see you then.
Good luck, you guys.